Let's move on now to our next story, and we start off with that one that seems to be very, very daunting. It's nearly 3 months since South Africa entered its latest bout of ongoing power outages as a result of maintenance challenges, and it seems there is no end in sight for the power utilities' woes. Well, last week, a high court in the country set aside a multi-million dollar tender that the power utility awarded two companies to provide maintenance and outage repair services at its 15 coal-fired power stations.
The decision came after a long-time service provider that was cut out of a tender bid raised an objection to the award. The court has now ordered the power utility to reissue the tender. In the meantime, the companies that won the tenders will continue to provide services. We'll be having a guest, an energy expert, join us much later in the show as we explore what this means for the people in South Africa and for power supply. There have been the power struggle has been real in South Africa, really. What we've seen is there's been conversations about load shedding. Very recently, they said that they are donating about 50,000, I think it's 50,000. I'm not quite sure of the numbers, but they're donating some amount of petrol to Eskom, diesel rather, to Eskom to help bring down the load shedding to stage 3. But there have been projections that what we're going to see is that this load shedding is going to get up to 2027. And people of South Africa are complaining. They're saying this is not what we bargained for. It's affecting all the areas of their lives. It's affecting the hospitals. It's affecting their health. So there have been lots of complaints about how the government has run, things in the country. And light and the power cuts and load shedding has been a major problem. But I mean, we are going to just have to wait and see how this eventually turns out.
It is indeed a problem there because this is a case where South Africans aren't used to this. They do not want this to linger, rather, and they're hoping that this will stop anytime soon. But as it seems, whether they like it or not, it's a case they have to bear. Well, Eskom is actually going through a really challenging time right now, and looking at mitigations that are put in place to ensure that this continuous load shedding will indeed stop. But what we hear is it will continue for the next 5 years. It's not something that will just stop as a whole. Besides, there's a case of maintenance, which we also hear that the High Court has indeed overturned the tender. And so courts, the courts coming in and playing this role will definitely set the solution or the problem finding or solution finding, I beg your pardon, back. It would not make it any easier. So it's going to make it tougher for them. And that's exactly what everyone is talking about. So it's a case that South Africans will have to really look into. Cyril Ramaphosa will also like to possibly, I'm expecting to see another address that will come forth, possibly another State of the Nation address, trying to talk to the people, let them know where they want to move to, things that needs to be done. There has been a little internal crisis between Eskom, don't forget the ministers as well. There are cases where monies are purported to have been laundered or moved away, and things that ought to have been done weren't done in time past. And now we're also having the same situation. So if we're going to link this, we're going to link it to within some certain parts of Africa. And that's Southern Africa. If you come down to the western part of Nigeria as well, we're also struggling, but we're not struggling with load shedding this time. We're struggling with even power outage has been a problem in Nigeria since I was born.
Many Nigerians would have gladly accepted load shedding in exchange for what is currently obtainable.
I mean, it's far better. At least a day, I know I can have light for 3 hours, but it's consistent. It's daily. It's quite different from not having anything at all.
Yes.
But this is what South Africa is facing. Maintenance contract has been actually overturned by the court.
And Eskom is actually owing a lot of money. They're going to the tune of 400 billion rand. National Treasury has pledged to help support them. There's been a lot of drama that has happened there. A contractor there was arrested for sabotage. Acting head of generation at Eskom resigns. They're chasing up to 1 billion rand from Mozambique. But there's a lot of drama that's been going on there. Let's talk about it even further. Now, joining us to give us more insight on this is energy expert and managing director at EE Business Intelligence, Chris Yelland. Good morning, Chris. Thank you for joining us this morning. Now, talk to us. What does this High Court decision to overturn the tender tell us about the state of power supply in South Africa?
Yeah, the state of power supply is precarious at the moment. We are subjected to regular load shedding, sometimes up to 6-7 hours a day.
Can you hear us?
and it's really having a very serious impact on the economy and, of course, to customers of electricity and even domestic users.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so let's take this a little further. The company that objected was a company called Babcock Engineering. Now, given the fact that Babcock has been working with Eskom for many years, would you say that the issue with the tender was maybe unreasonable?
Yeah, the courts found it was unreasonable. They found it not only unreasonable, but irrational and illegal. And they have set aside a contract which has had excluded Babcock from a 16 billion rand tender on very spurious grounds. The issues are simply that Babcock appeared not to have included its welding certificate, its proof of welding competence in the tender document. Now, Babcock has been doing welding for Eskom for years, and Eskom has a copy of that welding certificate on record anyway. And in fact, Babcock has received several awards from Eskom for its welding excellence over the years, and it's been doing welding work, on Eskom power stations continuously for many years. So the courts found that it was completely irregular and irrational for them to have excluded Babcock on these spurious grounds. The tender has been overturned and set aside, and Eskom has been ordered to reissue the tender. So I think that's where things are at the moment.
All right. Well, the court has ordered that the companies who won still provide services until the new tender is awarded. Now, how will this really affect the productivity of the utility, if it will at all?
Well, I must say that the companies that received the tender award, that is Steinmuller and a company called Actom, who are the people behind John Thompson boilers. Both of these are international companies that are highly regarded in their field and are long-standing contractors of Eskom as well. So the fact that that contract will continue until the new tender is issued in no longer than 6 months, I don't think will have a bad and very negative impact on Eskom. They are reputable and capable contractors. As is Babcock. These are the three maintenance contractors, boiler maintenance contractor that Eskom has been using, and they are all international companies of high reputation. So the judge sort of indicated that it would be wrong to simply overturn this contract and leave it in limbo whilst a new contract was awarded, which could take up to 6 months. That would have a deleterious impact on Eskom and on the electricity supply in South Africa. So the judge ordered that the existing contract should remain in place until the new contract replaces it in no more than 6 months.
Let's talk about what's next. They have in projections that things are about to get worse. I did see a tweet where someone said, "Be prepared." After stage 4 shared loading, it's most likely going up to stage 6, and there have been projections that it's not going to get any better. That we're going to see a consistent decline up until 2027. Eskom is going through a really challenging time. What should be done to mitigate this continuous load shedding with the power outages? And are we really expected to face these projections that have been said to be forthcoming?
You see, the options to resolve this problem in the short term, and by short term I mean the next 2 years, are very limited. There are indeed options that I think should be pursued aggressively, and I think they will make a significant difference. But there seems to be a slowness and a reluctance by government to embrace the energy of the private sector through self-generation, embedded generation, distributed generation at the small scale levels. When I mean small scale, I mean thousands of small domestic and commercial and manufacturing customers to do self-generation in the form of rooftop solar PV and battery energy storage. The scale of this is not small. They are small installations, but together they aggregate and add up to a very significant amount. If this can be not only allowed and encouraged, but also incentivized, it can make a huge difference. But when it comes to public procurements of new large-scale generation capacity, these things take time, and government is very slow and bureaucratic. And then, of course, there is the production, the construction time of these mega projects can take several years, many years. So I think we've got to look to the private sector to harness the energy of the private sector and to harness the energy of customers to become part of the solution. And that's where the short term, in the next 2 years, that's where the solutions are likely to come from. But we really have to harness this energy and encourage it and incentivize it if it's going to make the difference that it could make.
Very quickly, as we come to the end of this conversation, how much impact do you think this would have on the ANC government? There have been criticism about how this, the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, promised that load shedding will be a thing of the past, but unfortunately, he's sitting on top of the load shedding and it's getting even worse. How do you think this would affect the government and their maybe plans to return to power?
Without a doubt, you see, load shedding and the shortage of electricity is impacting on every citizen in the country and on every business and commercial enterprise. The ANC elective conference is coming up, and there is no doubt that it is having a negative political impact. And it's very high on the minds of politicians, and you can see this from their public statements as they scramble to apportion blame to everybody except themselves. There are significant political impacts. It is likely to be a vote loser for the ANC in the next elections, and is certainly high on the minds of the people, I think, attending the ANC elective conference in December. Unfortunately, as I say, politicians have a habit of finding people to blame instead of actually resolving the underlying issues. And unless we resolve the underlying issues, no amount of throwing money at this problem, thinking that is the solution, is not about the short-term financial constraints. It is about dealing with deep underlying structural and technical and environmental issues.
Chris Yelland, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We do hope that we find an end to the load shedding and the crisis that Eskom is currently facing, and that normalcy is returned in the energy sector. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.